In 1976, Steve Jones cursed at a TV presenter live on air, and the band became public enemy #1 in England. In 1969, a guy was stabbed to death 3 meters from the Rolling Stones stage. They finished the show. In 1979, 11 fans were trampled to death before The Who even played the first note. And in 1984, the best guitarist of the generation traded his guitar for a keyboard and was #1. And if you don't know how all this connects, if you think it was just natural evolution, just progress, just the industry doing its job, then you haven't understood anything about what happened to rock. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you now. Not the story you've already heard, but the story nobody tells. December 6th, 1969. The Rolling Stones were playing at Altamont Speedway in California, a free concert that was supposed to be the Woodstock of the West. They hired the Hells Angels for security and paid them with $500 worth of beer. During Sympathy for the Devil, the violence was already so intense that Mick Jagger stopped the music and asked for calm.
Why are we fighting? Why are we fighting?
But calm didn't come. During Under My Thumb, a guy named Meredith Hunter, 18 years old, black, wearing a lime green jacket, a .22 caliber revolver on his hip, moved toward the stage. And Alan Pissarro, one of the Hells Angels, leather jacket, gang name across the back, stabbed him with a hunting knife. Meredith fell to the ground, just a few meters from the stage while the Rolling Stones were still playing. They finished the show while the ambulance took too long to arrive, and that was rock in the 60s. Rock where violence was real, where death could happen in the middle of your favorite song, where you didn't know if you were going to leave the show alive. In December 1976, Freddie Mercury missed an interview on Thames Television in London, so EMI sent the Sex Pistols in his place, 4 guys who had released Anarchy in the UK a week earlier and had never been on live TV. And the presenter, Bill Grundy, who many thought looked drunk, started taunting them live on air. Then Steve Jones yelled,
"You dirty fucker."
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight.
live on Tea Time TV. And the next day, all the British newspapers had the Sex Pistols on the front page. Grundy was suspended for 2 weeks and never presented a prime-time show again. And the Sex Pistols became the most hated faces in England overnight. And that was rock in 1976. December 3rd, 1979. The Who plays at the Riverfront Coliseum in Cincinnati, Ohio. 18,000 people in a sold-out show. The band had done a sound check at 3 in the afternoon, but when the doors opened shortly before 7 in the evening, thousands of people outside panicked. Someone shouted that tickets were running out, that the show was sold out, and the mass of people began pushing forward. The doors gave way under the pressure, bodies fell to the ground, and 11 people died trampled. Teenage fans and young adults crushed against the concrete floor. And when The Who took the stage at 8:15 in the evening, they didn't know what had happened. They played the entire set, Baba O'Reilly, Behind Blue Eyes, Won't Get Fooled Again, and only when they left the stage did someone tell them. And they didn't know what to do. There was no protocol for that. There was no manual on how to react when 11 fans die trying to see you play. And that was rock in the late 70s. Rock where tragedy could happen even before the first note was played. Where the energy of the crowd could transform into mass death without anyone realizing it until it was too late.
The ending, however, was not as fortunate for a number of them. 11 young persons died.
August 1981, Day 1. 1 minute past midnight. MTV debuted with the Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star.
Radio star, video killed the radio star.
The phrase, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll," opened the broadcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
That first day, 116 different clips were shown, 209 times in total. Rod Stewart appeared 16 times. Pat Benatar appeared 14 times. And the channel only had about 200 clips in total, and it played them 24 hours a day, repeating everything in an infinite loop. But there was a serious problem. Very few heavy rock bands made videos at that time because they thought it was commercial pop. So MTV showed what it had. But it didn't have that real risk-taking energy. And those watching at home saw that and thought they were watching rock, but they weren't. I was witnessing the beginning of something different. Something that looked like rock, but had perfect studio lighting, impeccable salon hair, professional makeup, and choreography rehearsed for weeks. The beginning of a more confident, more beautiful, more marketable rebellion.
With a thrill in my head and a pill on my...
June 1982. Duran Duran releases Hungry Like the Wolf in the United States. And nothing happens. The song doesn't immediately enter the Billboard charts. The album Rio had performed below expectations. But then the video, directed by Russell Mulcahy, begins to circulate on MTV. And the video was unlike anything else. Filmed in Sri Lanka with a budget of around $40,000, inspired by adventure films like Indiana Jones, with model Sheila Ming action and chase scenes. It looked like an adventure film and not a band video. And MTV puts it in heavy rotation. Without practically any radio play, the public begins to discover the song through television. In a few months, the album begins to gain momentum in the United States. On December 25, 1982, the song enters the Billboard Hot 100 for the first time at number 77. And weeks later, it was already in the top 40. And then, those who worked in the music industry realized that it was possible to sell music without depending solely on radio. All it took was a movie-like feel. All it took was being on MTV all the time. And that changed everything. Because before, the music was what mattered, and the image was a consequence. Now, the image became half the work. And half was enough to transform risk into controlled spectacle, a domesticated rebellion. 1983 arrives, and Michael Jackson releases Thriller. The music video cost $500,000, 14 minutes long, directed by John Landis, who had made An American Werewolf in London, with cinematic special effects, monster makeup, zombie choreography. And it goes into heavy rotation on MTV, becoming a constant presence in the programming. The album sells more than 30 million copies in the United States alone. More than 30 million. And those who are making heavy rock look at this and think that maybe they're doing everything wrong. Maybe they need keyboards. Maybe they need a pretty music video. Maybe they need to stop being dangerous and become beautiful products that fit perfectly on the television screen. Dangerous only in appearance, only in visuals, only in marketing. January 1983. Eddie Van Halen finishes building Studio 5150 at his home in Studio City, Los Angeles. The name comes from the California code for interning people who are dangerous to themselves or others. In early 1983, the first sessions begin there, and Eddie had a song he'd kept for years, made on keyboard, that he thought would never work. It was Jump. When he shows it to the guys in the band, David Lee Roth says he's a guitar hero and shouldn't play keyboard. But Ted Templeman, the producer who had made Van Halen's previous albums, hears it and immediately says it's a sure hit. So they recorded it at 5,150. And Roth wrote the lyrics inspired by a scene he saw on television. A guy trying to jump off a tall building in Los Angeles broadcast live on the local news. And Jump was #1 on Billboard. Van Halen had never achieved that before. The album 1984 quickly sold millions, and Eddie Van Halen, considered by many to be the best guitarist of his generation, played synthesizer solos instead of guitar. And it worked. And that was rock in 1984. And those who had lived through the 70s looked at this and felt that something had disappeared. They couldn't say exactly what. They only knew that they no longer felt fear. They no longer felt that sensation that anything could happen at any moment. Because now, everything was calculated. Everything was rehearsed. And so were the 80s years of silent and gradual transformation, where rock became a visual spectacle, became a product of the recording industry, became safe entertainment for the whole family. And nobody noticed at the time, because it happened slowly. It happened naturally. It happened as an evolution. And those who tried to do something different simply couldn't find space, because MTV didn't play it. The radio stations didn't play it. And without that, you didn't exist. We arrive in September 1991. Nirvana releases Smells Like Teen Spirit as the first single from the album Nevermind. And the video premieres on MTV on September 29th on the program 120 Minutes at Midnight. Directed by Samuel Bayer, with Kurt Cobain interfering at every stage, insisting on the dirty aesthetic, the school being destroyed, the anarchic students, the ugly and clumsy band. And suddenly, rock smelled like rock again. And for 2 years, it seemed like it was coming back. That dangerous rock was coming back. And in a way, grunge brought it back. But MTV learned faster this time. In just 2 years, Nirvana was already on the channel's regular programming. In November 1993, they recorded Unplugged at Sony Studios in New York, with a decoration of white candles and lilies that looked like a funeral, an idea by designer Robert Fisher that was approved by Kurt Cobain. And he was visibly nervous, trembling, and asked for the audience to be closer to the stage. And it was one of the last memorable performances he gave before he died in April 1994. The album Unplugged in New York was released in November 1994 and ended up reaching #1 on the charts and sold about 5 million copies in the United States alone. And Cobain never saw it. He never knew that that nervous and trembling performance had become one of the most important albums of the decade. If you've made it this far and are still thinking about the guy who died while Mick Jagger was singing, about the 11 people crushed against the concrete floor, about Eddie Van Halen swapping his guitar for a keyboard because it was that or the end of his career, then this video worked. And if it worked, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment which of these stories really got to you, because I read everything. And until the next video,